Hi Year 11, I just wanted to take this opportunity to make a quick video for you. You're probably watching this the night before the exam, so you're probably watching this on Wednesday. You might be watching it a little bit earlier, but if you are watching it a bit earlier, I think it would be a good idea to revisit this just before, sort of in the evening time when you're looking over your notes for your PPE. So for the paper 1 exam, it is only going to be on natural hazards. In the real thing, you will also have development dynamics and urbanisation in there, but we're still learning that content. So this paper is nice and short, 30 minutes. The real thing will be 90 minutes. But on Thursday, it's a half an hour exam. And I've also already told you that the 8-mark question will be a tectonic case study. So that means it will either be Haiti or Japan, or it might be Haiti and Japan. So I'm going to give you some top tips on revising for that now, in case you're just looking at this now and thinking you can't remember your facts. Again, in the real thing, it's likely to be a tectonic one or climate change, and that's why I've set this exam up the way that I have. So let's have a look at some notes together and give you some ideas of ways to move forward. So, top topics to revise: natural hazards, tectonic. Any of these topics could come up in the PPE exam. So I would just encourage you to take a look over this list, pause this video now if you want to, and consider, would you be sort of red is not knowing any of this at all. I don't think that's any of you. Having been in and visited all the lessons, lots of you are really strong at understanding these bits on this page in particular. In a couple of classes, there was a bit of an issue with students forgetting the different type of plate boundaries and the features that are found there. So I definitely would just double check those, that you're happy with convergent, moving together. Convergent collision, where they move together, it's two continentals form a mountain. Convergent destructive, when you've got an oceanic goes under a continental and that forms big volcanic eruptions at composite volcanoes. Divergent, where they move apart, and conservative when they move past each other. Conservative mainly forming earthquakes, very, very powerful earthquakes. As I said on the previous slide, you are going to need to know tectonic hazards. It tells you exactly there what you need to know for Haiti and Japan, and I've got some facts coming up in a minute that we can look over together. We need to be able to understand why in a poorer country, basically they have less money, so therefore they're less prepared for natural hazards. That means that they don't have earthquake-proof buildings, they don't have the resilience, and it means that more people tend to get injured or die. The responses also tend to be a lot slower in a poorer country. Why do people continue to live there? They may not have the economic ability to be able to move somewhere else, but also you can get quite fertile lands around volcanic areas, for example. And monitoring, planning and prediction of tectonic hazards can reduce their effects, so we can monitor them through using seismometers. That's that one that's almost like a little pen, and it's recording all the time the movement in the earth. And when we get more movement, we can go, oh, well, there might be an earthquake, and we can send out an alert. But the problem with predicting earthquakes is that it's quite unreliable, because you only really know it's about to happen just before it happens. So in the Japan one, for example, although they had the best technology for predicting earthquakes because they're so hazard prone, it still was 5 seconds after the initial quake moment that people got the alert on their phone. And that's really, really fast, but obviously it's like getting the announcement just as it's about to happen. So they still will cause large amounts of hazard to life. So have a look over this, pause this now. Your green revision guide is the best place to look over any of that if you need any more detail than what I've just said. When you're ready, press play and we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so now you've had a little look at those in your revision guide, or you've recapped those, we're going to focus on the atmospheric hazards. So remember, tectonic is the stuff that happens under the surface. Okay, so it's the way in which the crust is moving. Atmospheric, which we're looking at next, is the way in which the air is affecting the hazards that we face. Okay, so I've blocked out one section of this. The reason I've done that is that you don't have to revise Hurricane Katrina and Cyclone Nargis for this PPE exam. In the real thing, you will revise those, but I wanted to slim down the content so that you can really focus on the core elements that are in front of you. So you can see here that you need to know your global atmospheric circulation, your Hadley cells, Ferrel cells and polar cells. You need to know that the low pressure leads to heavy rainfall and storms. High pressure leads to dry. It's really important to maybe have a quick recap of some of your understanding of where that means rainfall is found. So for example, at the equator, it's hot because of a high concentration of sunlight, but it's also extremely rainy. So that's why we end up with a rainforest. You move away from the equator, you get an area of high pressure, and that's mainly deserts that you find there. You move away again and you end up in an area of low pressure, and that would be us at around 60 degrees north, 60 degrees south. So we've got quite a lot of rainfall throughout the year, haven't we? But it's cooler because we're further away from the equator. And then when you get to the poles, that's an area of high pressure, so it's dry, but it's cold because it's less concentration of sunlight. The sunlight's spread over a larger area. So it's important just to recap that. If there's anything I've said there that you didn't understand, check it out in your Green Revision Guide. Distribution of tropical storms just means where they're found. They only form over 26.5 degrees Celsius seas, which means they're found quite equatorial, near the equator, and they move in a east to westerly direction. They're formed by rapid evaporation at the ocean surface, which leads to these big, powerful, low-pressure systems. And as they grow in intensity, they then become a tropical storm, which is a spinning mass of low pressure spinning anti-clockwise. The middle of the storm is called the eye. It's very calm. The eye wall just next to that is the fastest bit, the most powerful bit of the storm. It says how might they be affected by global warming. They're expected to increase in intensity. So as the seas are getting warmer, that's going to lead to more evaporation. So therefore, tropical storms getting bigger and being more destructive. We can monitor them through GIS. So we've got lots of different satellites travelling around the Earth, taking photos of the Earth's surface, and we can track the direction in which they're going, and then we can plan and predict where they're going to go next, which means we can ensure that people are prepared. We can evacuate them if need be. Then we've got a bit on here about climate change. So you do need to be aware of the past causes of climate change. So that's orbital theory, sunspot theory, eruption theory. I'd say you need to know one of those in detail, but it might be worth having a look at a couple of those if you can't remember them. It says evidence for and against climate change. How do we know that the past climate was different? Well, we can look at tree rings, we can look at paintings, we can look at ice cores, and we can look at the size of CO2 gases trapped to tell us how much CO2 is in the atmosphere. If there was more CO2 in the atmosphere, it was warmer. If there's less, then it was colder. Natural causes of climate change we've just mentioned. Human causes of climate change, really easy. Transport, factories, combustion of fossil fuels. The economic, social, environmental, political impacts of climate change, it's thinking about things like if sea levels are going to rise, we need to have more money invested in coastal management, for example. Things like people having to move out of their country because they are so prone to coastal flooding is going to be a really big one. Some countries prone to drought, so what are they going to do to ensure they have a safe supply of water, that they have food supplies available? And then mitigation means trying to stop climate change. So the best mitigation is renewable energy, obviously quite expensive. But what other ways can we do it? We can try and reduce our carbon footprint. We can cycle to work. We can be more energy efficient in our homes, turning off the lights and things like that. So have a little look over those. If there's any of that that you think was maybe not as secure in your knowledge, check out your Green Revision Guide and move on to the next slide. Okay, so I've told you that the 8 marker will be tectonic. These are the facts you need to revise. Basically, if you revise this whole page here, you have all of that in your head, then you're going to absolutely ace this 8 marker. Make sure that you're aware of the difference between primary and secondary impacts. So remember, primary impacts is what happens first. Secondary impacts is what happens after as a result of the primary impact. You can then see for the responses, so responses like what did they do afterwards to try and resolve the problem. Short term is things that last hours, days, weeks, maybe up to sort of 6 months or so. Long term is what lasted, into the future and protected them in future. And you can essentially see that Japan was way more prepared, so the impacts were less severe. They did have big impacts in terms of the cost, but that's mainly because their buildings are worth so much that they cost more to repair. The responses for Haiti were really poor overall. They were too slow. The country remained reliant on aid for ages. And in Japan, they had the best balance. They had great short-term responses. So your 100,000 soldiers deployed, that's a really large amount for helping with search and rescue. They set up an exclusion zone very quickly and evacuated 140,000 people from the area around the Fukushima nuclear power plant, and you remember seeing in photos the little prefab houses they put them in. So although they were short-term solutions, they were very effective short-term solutions. So pause this here, revise these facts, get someone to quiz you on them. So some top tips for the 8 markers. We've been practicing these in class, but I wanted to give you a quick reminder just while you're looking at this tonight before your exam tomorrow. So box the command word. It will either be assess or it will be evaluate. Underline the geography. Is this question asking you for effects or impacts? Is it responses? Is it prediction? Underline that geography. Then be really cautious. Is it asking you for a developed country? If so, it's Japan. Or is it asking you developing, in which case it is Haiti? Write your 2 facts that you're going to use, your 2 bits of knowledge. Write them down next to the question before you even think about answering it. So if it says 2 impacts, evaluate the impacts in Haiti, write down your 2 impacts. Write them at the top, the specific numbers, whatever it is that you're going to write down. 8 hospitals collapsed, etc. Decide which of the 2 is the most significant. So look at your 2 facts you've written and do your most significant paragraph first, because it's the one that you feel is the biggest situation. Then use our AKUU structure. We use this in class all the time, but I just wanted to give you a little prompt. Then do your second paragraph, which is obviously going to be the least significant or a less significant impact, if it's an impact, or a less significant response. Make sure that you use specific knowledge. If you panic on the 8 mark question, I've been telling my classes this already, and I know Miss Pellegrino's been saying it too. Cross out the word assess like I have there, write the word explain, and just treat it like an explain question. One thing that happened in the Japan earthquake, so say it says assess the impacts, cross it out, and it says explain the impacts. One thing that happened in the Japan 2011 earthquake was, tell me what the fact is, give me the bit of knowledge. This meant that as a result. And if you do that twice, KAU, and then on the end you put a little conclusion on saying, overall I think that the worst impact was, or overall I think the worst response was, you're going to easily get yourself at least 4 out of 8. 4 out of 8 is 50%. 50% is easily a grade 5 if you do that the whole way through these papers. So don't stress yourself out with worrying about the significance aspect. If you can't do that, just do a fact, double develop it, put a conclusion on the end. So my final top tips, and these are, ones that you can use throughout all the papers. So this is useful for all the PPEs, and I'll remind you in the other ones too. Attempt every question. Just write something down, even if you think it's daft. If you cannot think of anything at all, please don't leave anything blank. Remember to think about the style of answering a question. So if it says describe the pattern shown on the map or describe the trend shown on the graph, it's trend, evidence, anomaly. If there is no anomaly, then you give another bit of evidence. So trend, it increases. Evidence, for example, in this year it was this, in this year it was this. anomaly. An anomaly in this pattern is the year 1980 when there was a sharp decrease or whatever it is. Okay, if you can't see an anomaly or you're not sure about anomalies, just do 2 bits of evidence to be sure. Remember bits of knowledge, describe or state questions, just give them a fact. Don't write me a big faffy sentence, just tell me the answer. If it says explain, remember you need to do your fact and then you say this means that. Look at the mark allocation to think how many times you need to do it. And this is the thing I was saying before, don't faff about. So think about a question, describe 3 human activities that increase CO2 emissions worth 3 marks. Don't write 3 human activities that increase CO2 emissions are. We don't need that. Just tell me. Factories, deforestation, fossil fuel combustion. Done. Really quick. Going to save you more time. Revise your facts. They're the ones we've looked at today. Look at them right before you go to bed. Put your phone away. Put it to one side so you're not getting distracted by that. And then read these facts. Go over and over and over them. You might be really tired, but your brain is taking that information in. And what will happen is when you're sleeping, the facts will all be logged in your memory, in your subconscious, and you'll wake up in the morning and you will remember the facts. And lastly, do the 8 marker first if you're worried about it. You've got 30 minutes, that's plenty of time for this exam. You're going to absolutely smash it. I know all of you are extremely capable. Lastly, if you've got any more questions, please come and see us. We'll obviously do our little morning revision session. We're not doing a morning revision session. It's a lunchtime revision session. These posters are on every single geography classroom. They show you what's in your exam and the date of it. They show you when the revision's on, where to find revision materials and strategies for revision. But if you need any further help, just come and see us or give us an email and yeah, go smash it.